Hello friends and welcome. It's me, Logan Albright, back with another book review for your reading pleasure. And today I've got another Clive Barker novel for you. As some of you may know, if you've been following my channel, I've kind of recently become a big Clive Barker fan. I read The Hellbound Heart after being a fan of the film, Hellraiser, and I thought it was so good that I wanted to dive in and read more of his books. So I read Weave World, and I read Mr. Be Gone, and now I have read Cabal. And I really liked Cabal. I thought Cabal was a great book. The interesting thing to note about Cabal, at least in my edition, and I'm not sure if this is true in every edition, but you should know this going in. Cabal is only part of this volume. This volume here is about 400 and something pages, and Cabal is about half of it. And the other half is a series of short stories that make up volume 6 of the Books of Blood, which is Clive Barker's short story collection. And I didn't know that, and so I was reading along, enjoying Cabal, and I was like halfway through the book, and suddenly the story ended, and I was very confused, because I was like, I got half the book left. What's going to happen? So that's good to know going in if you buy this edition of Cabal. The second half is very different. And the stories are fine. The stories are good. I haven't read the rest of the Books of Blood, but I've heard they're one of the weaker volumes. But the main event is the novel. And so I'm going to talk about the novel. I'm not going to talk much about the short stories because I think that, they're sort of so-so short stories. Some of them I like more than others. Now, the novel Cabal is about a character named Boone who is kind of mentally disturbed, and he goes to see a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist tells him that he is the perpetrator of all of these gruesome murders that have been going on around town, and that he doesn't remember it, and that they have to work through their issues together and work up a way to get him to a confession. And Boone sort of flees at this notion, and he ends up searching for a kind of city of misfits, a city of outcasts, a city of monsters, which is called Midian. And he goes on this quest for the city of Midian, and the police are after him, and his psychiatrist is after him. And it ends up being like most of the book ends up taking place in this kind of graveyard city. And in this sense, it reminded me a little bit of Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard book, because you're dealing with the denizens of this graveyard and these things and these creatures that live underneath the graveyard. And the Graveyard book is obviously a much more lighthearted take on the same theme. This is a very adult book. This is a very dark book. But I really like that kind of macabre city under the graveyard sort of idea. And so that was really appealing to me. And then Boone is also being pursued, I should say, by his girlfriend, Laurie, who is upset that he sort of vanished without a trace. So a lot of the story follows Laurie, and that, again, is sort of confusing when you first read it, because you get to, you start off following Boone and seeing what's going on with him, and then suddenly you're following Laurie for a large portion of the book, and you're like, is this book about Boone or is this book about Laurie? And it's sort of about both of them. It's about their parallel journeys and how they come together and separate in different ways throughout the course of the book. There's a lot of kind of vagueness in the book. A lot is not really fully explained about what's going on down there and how it got to be the way it is, and what the nature of the creatures down there are, and I kind of like that. It adds to the spookiness, it adds to the mystery. So you've got a lot of kind of the hallmarks of a good horror story here, right? You've got, mental illness, you've got graveyards and spooky things that live in graveyards, you've got serial killers and gruesome murders. All that stuff sort of comes together. It's sort of a collection of these horror tropes that all work really well together. And there's a lot of different ways to kind of elicit fear and spook you out in this story. So I think it really worked well. I think it's my second favorite of the Clive Barker things I've read. I think Hellbound Heart is still my favorite, but I think I preferred this one to Weave World. Weave World wasn't really a horror story. It was more of a dark fantasy. And so I like this one a little bit better. It's very concise. It's only about 200 pages, as I said. The rest of the book is short stories, but it has a good payoff, and it has a good narrative journey through the different characters, and you see different points of view. And I think it's really well written. I think Clive Barker's got a really great way with words. I think he's got a really great way of kind of creating visual pictures in your head with his language that he uses, which makes sense because he's also a film director who directed Hellraiser. So that's one of the things I really like about him. I like his very visual narrative style. One of the interesting points in this book for fans of kind of the occult is Baphomet makes an appearance. And if you're not familiar with Baphomet, he's used kind of incorrectly, I would say, as this icon of the Church of Satan or the Satanic Temple. This big winged goat-horned figure. It's used as a satanic symbol these days, but it was not originally meant to be that. It was drawn up by the French occult figure Eliphas Levi, who drew it as sort of a uniting of different principles of nature, the masculine and the feminine principle kind of coming together. And it was meant to be a much more positive and uniting force. And now it is, synonymous with Satanism, but that's not really what it was intended to be. You can see here this drawing of Baphomet from Eliphas Levi's original work. which is translated here under the title Transcendental Magic. That's not the best translation of the actual French title, but I digress. That's what Baphomet looks like. Pretty cool, pretty scary, but not really intended to be a symbol of evil in its original conception and sort of misused today. And so when it makes the appearance in the book, you have to wonder, like, is it a good guy? Is it a bad guy? What's going on with Baphomet? Is this the same Baphomet that we've seen in occult literature, or is it something else? And it's not that clear. You never really get, it's called the baptizer in this, and you never really get a really clear sense of what it's exactly like, what its nature is like, if it's good or if it's evil. And I like that. I like the ambiguity. The ambiguity in these books is always nice. And that's, I think the most primordial fear and the oldest fear is the fear of the unknown, the fear of death, the fear of darkness, and all of these things that kind of come from our primitive existence on this planet. And Clive Barker taps into all those themes really well here, because you not only have the fear of death associated with the graveyard and the darkness underneath from the underground, but you're also not told everything that's going on. And so everything's a little bit mysterious, and that mystery contributes to the horror, because I think there's a tendency in a lot of authors to over-explain and to give away too much. And just like the shark in Jaws, the less you see, sometimes the more frightening it is. So that's pretty much all I have to say about Clive Barker's Cabal. I really thought it was great. If you like horror stories that are sort of mysterious and set in graveyards, you'll enjoy it. The short stories that follow are reasonably enjoyable as well, although to me not nearly as engaging. There's one about a magician at the very end that I quite liked. I like stories about kind of magicians who are secretly actual wizards and have made deals with the devil, or have acquired dark occult powers in some way. So I like that story best. It was called The Last Illusion, I believe. That story is really good. The other three stories are okay. I do want to read the Books of Blood at some point. That's something that I need to delve into. I hear the first 3 volumes are very, very good. But I tend to prefer these novels so far to the short stories. So I'll get to them at some point. But I have other Clive Barker novels to read as well. And that is a nice segue for me to ask you, my faithful viewing public, my audience, who I rely on so much, please comment down below and tell me which Clive Barker book I should read next. Should I read The Thief of Always? Should I read Imagica? All these different novels that he's done, they all sound pretty cool. Let me know in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will come back and do another one for you as soon as I can. I'm actually going to be traveling next week, so I won't be around, but I will try to get you another video pretty soon. I'm always reading, always coming up with new things, and if you have any other suggestions for authors I should check out, I'd like to hear those as well. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Logan Albright, and I'll catch you next time.